Hi everyone, today we're going to finish lab 16. Now lab 16 is the second to last lab. The last lab, lab 17, we start the engine up, which means we have to finish putting this thing together. So we have the cover over here with the rewind assembly. We have the breather right here that has to go on. We have the carburetor and gas tank and muffler right here. And we are also going to put oil in it and check for spark. Okay, so that's what we're going to work on in this one. So the first thing you want to get out lab number 16. So first thing, step one, find your engine breather along with a gasket. Clean the breather as necessary and make sure that the gasket is in good shape. So that's going to go right here. I have my breather and gasket right here. So I'm going to remove the screws here, the bolts. So remember, we put those right back in the same place they came out of so we didn't lose them. It's a good habit you want to get into. There's that. Hand tightening it to start. Don't want to cross thread it. Okay, so got that on there. Now there is this tube right here that goes up to the carburetor, but I'm going to wait on that until I get the carburetor in place. Number two, make sure that you do not over tighten the bolts. Install the breather to the engine, make sure it's not upside down. Number three, install the screen to the rewind assembly, and I believe we took care of that already in the previous lab right here, with the screen right here so you don't get your fingers in there. 4, make sure your governor lever, spring, spark plug wire, and ground wire are all correctly positioned. So, one thing I'm going to have to do, I have my carburetor, I have my linkage here. Now this linkage right here, this end is going to come out to my governor spring right here. Now it says, while being careful of the spark plug wire, it goes in the notch in the shroud. Right up here, there's a little notch. Carefully slip the engine cover with the pull starter intact over the flywheel. Make sure all of the governor parts are correctly positioned. It is not a bad idea to tape these parts out of the way because the flywheel magnets tend to reach out and grab them. In the process, it will bend the snot out of them. One thing I'm going to do, I'm going to put the carburetor I'm gonna do this a little out of order, and I will explain why in a minute. I'm going to install my muffler loosely right here. This has this retaining nut here. The retaining nut is what tightens against the engine, not the muffler itself. Okay, so that's pretty good on there loosely. Now because of this linkage, you can see there's a little hole right here, and that's what that little stiff linkage goes onto. And this can be a hassle sometimes, especially when you're doing it kind of in an awkward position so people can see in the video. All right, I'm gonna turn this around and then I'll show you once I get it. Okay. So there we go. Got this on right here. Kind of see that on the air vane governor. Then I'm going to put my carburetor and get this gasket. Put the bolts through. One that started. Gonna swing that gasket back into place and put this other bolt in. Where did that gasket go? A little awkward. Just make sure you get that gasket between the carburetor and the engine. Right now I'm tightening the two bolts for the carburetor. That tight. Got that tight. So again, if you don't have the gasket in there, you're going to have some of the gas, the fuel leaking out of there. So you want to make sure you take care of that. Now back to this cover right here. I do have a couple bolts down below, I believe. And then there's one up top up here. Slide this cover over. Make sure it slips over all the correct metal parts. There we go. There's this one up top. I will show this to you in just a second. It's up top. You want to make sure that the spark plug, oops, slipped off. The spark plug cable is in the little notch that's in the top of this. All right, go ahead and tighten these. Just want to snug them up tight. Don't overdo it. Doesn't want to go too nicely on the side here. I think we'll be all right there. And this one up top, nice and snug. So I just talk about, if you can see it on top, there's a little notch right here. So you want to make sure that spark plug cable comes through there so it can reach onto there. Here's that linkage. There's this little stiff linkage right here that goes back into the governor spring. And there's a little loop right here that the spring's attached to, which gets attached to this side of the throttle linkage. So that took care of number 5. Number 6, we just did that. Those are the pull starter bolts. Governor spring is number 7. Make sure we did do that. Number 8. Get a hammer and punch. I have one sitting right over here. Number 9, install your muffler loosely. You'll tighten it later in this worksheet. Number 10, the correct hookup of your carburetor linkage and spring. I just took care of that. Number 11, remove the tape of your carburetor linkage, remove your carburetor mounting bolts, unwrap your carburetor, check it carefully, see that no damage has been done. Make sure that you have your carburetor gasket handy, it's in good shape. We did that. Number 12, before installing carburetor, move it in such a way as to be able to hook up the linkage without bending it. That was one of the things I did with this. That's why I did the carburetor first, so that this top linkage could be on that up at the top of the carburetor. Otherwise it's really hard and it bends, and I mean, you almost end up bending it regardless, but just to try and minimize the amount of bending that's going to happen right there. Install both carburetor bolts, number 13, and tighten them up. We took care of that a second ago. Number 14, install the breather hose that runs from the breather to the carburetor. That's what I was talking about prior. I can get this installed. So you can see that, maybe. That's this right here, coming down to that breather. Okay. Turn your muffler to the correct position using the hammer and punch. Tighten it just enough so that it will stay put. And this is number 15. Number 16 is get out the gas tank. And we're gonna mount that. So I have the gas tank right here. There's some screws up at the top. I have my gasket all set and ready. Now right now what I'm doing, I'm raising the gas tank. It's not a good place for me to, a good way for me to show this to you. I have the gasket on the top of the tank, and then there are the holes at the top of the carburetor that they line up with. I'm trying to line those up while keeping the gasket in position. That's what makes it kind of tough, is making sure that that gasket stays lined up with the holes. There's the holes at the top of the gas tank, the holes in the gasket, and the holes for the carburetor. So I'm putting the screws through the top by the carburetor, and then I'm tightening down those on the top up there. Okay. We're getting close here, guys. Okay, so got the gas tank on. Now this muffler, you can see how this kind of curves right here. That's why I kind of waited to tighten that down. So now this little it's like a little nut here, really little retainer. That has to get tightened down. Use a punch. Tighten it down to the right. Should be on there nice and tight now. Okay, so the carburetor on, linkage is all on. We have the gas tank, breather hose. We have the muffler all on. Got the rewind starter assembly. Got that on. Number 19 is the tank. Number 20 is the tank. And then number 21, install oil in your oil bottle into the engine crankcase. Use a funnel, wipe up any oil you spilled. If you need more oil, let me know. Okay, so I'm gonna pause the video. I'm gonna go get some oil, and we're gonna fill this with oil. All right, it should take about 20 ounces. I'll be right back. Okay, so a couple places to put the oil in. Right down here, there's one on the other side. Now, there's these two little posts here. If you ever have trouble with that, you can always just get a screwdriver in there between them and open it up that way, okay? So it's 20 ounces, but the amount, when you put your pinky in here, you should feel it sitting right down here at the base of this right here, okay? By all means, you can get oil, you can measure it so it's exact. That's probably the best way to go. I'm gonna do this little by little. There's a good chance that I'll pour a little too much because I'm pouring it into a funnel and I can't see. So if I make a mess, I'll clean it up. I'm gonna peek in there. Can't quite see it yet. I'm looking to see if I could see it sitting in there. Not quite there. I think it's like just about there. So what I want you to do on this lab, the lab sheet that you turn into this assignment, I want you to have on there, there are a question or two that's coming up that you're going to need to answer. But what I want you to do first, I want you to write a quick little summary as far as what we did in this lab. I also want you to put on there that we put 20 ounces of oil in here, okay? Write down the amount of oil we put in here, 20 ounces, 20, okay? So 20 ounces of oil. You can explain what we did as well. We got the oil in there, I got that all tightened down. Came up a little mess, I'll clean it up more later. So now we have oil in here. Can't forget that step. Don't skip that step. Okay? Now, number 22, we're gonna test the engine. I'll see if I can do this on my own. It's gonna be a little tough, but what we're gonna do is we're gonna check for spark, and that's what all this is. So there's a different types of spark testers. This particular one right here, it opens up. This gets attached to an unpainted ground, some metal part on your engine that's not painted. This end will attach to your spark plug cable. And then this is where we'll see the spark. So I want to make sure there's no spark plug in here, which there should not be. Let's see if I can get this. If I can, I'm going to try and turn this over. It's a little tough turning it over while doing it yourself. But if there is, you can look for some spark right there. Can you see that? You see what color it was? Hard to tell maybe from the video, but that spark right there was blue. It was blue spark right there. I could even hear it arcing across there. I'm gonna try this again. Let's get up nice and close so you can see it. Where it is, there it is. I'll try this again. See that spark there? If someone was holding the engine, I could pull this faster. You can see more. There's the spark. So that way we know we have spark, okay? So we just checked for spark. So that's one of the things you always want to check to make sure it is, when you look at if an engine is not running properly, gotta make sure it has fuel, make sure it has spark. It has spark. So when it does come time to test this, we'll make sure we have some fuel in there. One of the other things you can do, which we're going to do on the next lab, is we're going to do a compression test. We did it at the beginning, we're going to do it again. So if we have the proper compression in the cylinder and we have spark and we get fuel, if the timing is all aligned properly, which we did with the camshaft gear and the crankshaft gear, if those timing marks are lined up properly, you have fuel, you have spark, and you have compression, it should run. You want to make sure your carburetor is adjusted properly, which we will take care of next in the next lab. Okay, so in this, you want to write down the procedure, what we did. I want your own words. I don't want you to go step by step answering them. In your own words, what did we do in this lab? I want you to answer the questions like here where it says, did we get spark? Yes. What color was it? Blue. So you want to make sure you write that down. I also want you to write down how many ounces of oil that goes in the engine. And that's 20 ounces, okay? Make sure you have all those things written down for this lab, okay? So that ends at lab 16. This thing is all put back together. We just put the spark plug in, but we're not gonna do that yet because like I said, we're gonna check for compression. We have oil in here. Yeah, good job guys following along this whole way. The next one, we're gonna try to start this up. We only start for just a few seconds, nothing major. So let's make sure it does actually fire off, okay? If you have any questions, as always, let me know. I'll see you in lab 17.